Hello everybody, thanks for coming back. Hope you had a nice lunch. So my name is Tamara Kohler and I am the CEO and the Artistic Director of Contemporary Music for All, or the name we're more affectionately known as COMA. we can talk about that one later. My personal background, I'm a professional flute player, an arts producer and curator, and I've been specialising in the contemporary music sector for the last 15 years. And today, as part of our provocation, I'm going to be joined by 4 of our COMA London musicians, who I'll introduce a bit later today. So firstly, out of kind of my own curiosity, can you put your hand up if you've heard of COMA before? Not bad. Put that one in the report. So, so a tiny bit about us, and Billy, I'll grab my thanks to Billy for operating the slides for me today. So I'm just going to give you a very quick little rundown about who we are. We're a participatory new music charity, and we've been operating for 31 years now throughout the UK and in Europe. And everything we do is influenced by these 2 main drivers on the screen. So creativity and accessibility. Now, for anyone in this room that's danced with either of these mediums, you'll know that the journey to getting these right often has a lot of failure involved. There's bound to be a whole lot of failure in going to any kind of creative journey, and that's something we're going to lean in a bit today. But at COMA, we kind of celebrate failure because we think it's a way to find a greater being. Of course, we don't set out to fail, but we pride ourselves in recognising that we're not always going to get it right straight away. And there's much more value in learning and growing from these failures. We believe passionately in peer and sector sharing, and we work really closely with many of our partner organisations, being really honest about where we think we're failing and inviting them to do the same. And through that, we've always tried to form a web of connections where we can really pool our resources and our ideas and our support for each other. So COMA's creative activity, it's underpinned by the 3 pillars I've got here. So the first one, our network of national ensembles. These are ensembles all around the country. I think at latest count we've got 11 throughout the UK and 3 in Europe, and they're local ensembles that operate year-round, made up of local community amateur musicians who want to explore contemporary music. We have our specialist courses and residencies. So some examples of those are, for example, our My Sound scheme, which is a youth scheme for 14 to 18-year-olds, trying to give them an experience in music beyond their syllabus at school, looking at what the sector is today and how that could be something that they add to. Or our Connect the Dots scheme, which is targeted at composers and facilitators, looking deeper into methodologies behind inclusive collaboration with disabled musicians. And then the third, our biennial festival and our summer school. These are our big national and these days international platforms where we try to bring everyone together and put amateur music making on a really, really big stage. Now, of course, to enable these kinds of activities, particularly the work of our local ensembles, we've had to develop a really crucial resource. Thanks, Billy. COMA's developed a music catalogue of over 900 works suitable for performance and workshop by amateur musicians, and this includes 400 works directly commissioned by COMA. We think it's a really unique resource, and it is regularly used by amateur and professional ensembles around the world, universities and music hubs. We created this resource out of necessity. In 1993, when a very brilliant human called Chris Surety started COMA, there really wasn't much new music that was accessible for amateurs to play. It was too hard, it was too expensive, and it often required a really specific instrumentation, which maybe wasn't available to amateur players. Our goal was to develop a repertoire of new music for amateurs that was affordable, challenging but possible to play, and musically satisfying. So we decided to take on the approach of commissioning in open or flexible scored works to make our music as accessible to as many people as possible. And this would prove crucial in providing accessible repertoire, particularly for our more rural ensembles. We have a lot of ensembles that might be in quite small towns, and for example, if you know let's pull 3 in the air, a bassoon player, a kit player, and someone who calls themselves a kazoo player, we have repertoire that they can play, and they can form their own ensemble with our repertoire. So over the years, we've refined how we approach open scored commissioning, and we've worked with hundreds of composers from amateur level to very established creators. And throughout our history of commissioning, we've received some really common feedback, and funnily enough, particularly from the more established composers, that the Coma Commission was one of the hardest commissions they've ever had. So I want to delve a little bit deeper into that. And to do that, I'm going to use a case study of a work that was written for Coma in 1995 by the American-British composer Stephen Montague. The work is called Dark Sun, and it was written as a threnody for the victims of the Hiroshima atomic bomb, and it was premiered actually on the 50th anniversary of the bombing. So I'm going to show you now a little video of Stephen talking about receiving this commission from Coma.
So writing for amateurs is much tougher proposition. And I remember distinctly asking when I got this commission to do a piece that ultimately was called Dark Sun, August 1945. I remember asking what the lineup was for the orchestra, and Chris said, well, I don't really know. And I said, that's not an answer. What do you mean you don't really know? I said, well, for example, how many first violins? He said, well, there could be 6 or 10 or 3. And how many oboes? We never have an oboe, or there's only one oboe. How many French horns? We have an E-flat horn, but no French horns. I went through various parts. I said, how many double basses? We don't have any double basses. How many cellos? 27. I thought, what? So I envisaged, how do you write a piece, which basically open score, but not a concept I was familiar with at that point, that could embrace the fact that there might be just a couple of violins, could be 15 winds and 27 cellos. So it was really a difficult moment for me. How am I going to deal with this?
So clearly there's a practicality issue in writing in the open scored format, trying to find success under varying different instrumentations and sizes, and creating a work that will have longevity in all of those different formats. But the more fundamental challenge is actually writing a musical work of open scored, which is of high quality and musical maturity, while still factoring in the limitations of what an amateur player can do. Now, of course, amateur players don't have the technical facility of a professional musician, and this is where the deeper creativity comes into play, or humour me, where Coma starts to flirt a little bit with what professional musicians might call a failure.
So I thought, well, what any composer might want to do is to do a little research as to what I'm dealing with. So I went to a concert of Coma shortly after that. And the moment of epiphany was hearing the last chord of, I don't remember whose piece it was, but I thought, oh my God, how did you get such a rich texture of overtones, some in different tones, and this incredible sort of cacophonous sound? So I had to take a look at the score to see how that was achieved. And it turned out it was everybody playing unison C. I thought, yes, that's what I need to do, is to sort of any high note, or, where you don't actually have to struggle for pitches. And so it was a moment of revelation for me that, okay, I know what I ought to do for Coma that would be effective, would work musically, and would be maybe fun to play, etc. I then went on to compose something that used mouthpieces, which incidentally, I have to say, the professional orchestras have not played that part as well as Coma has. That the use of mouthpieces, even like when the BBC Symphony did it, they very carefully articulate the mouthpiece. I just wanted them to bite the reeds and blow. So there are many things that amateurs in this work, for example, did far better than the professionals.
Now, this is not to say Coma musicians don't strive to be correct, but we do encourage composers that we commission to spend time workshopping with our Coma musicians. And instead of getting frustrated if they can't achieve a really particular technique, we want them to think about what kind of alternative effect or interpretation could come out of this seeming imperfection.
I think what I managed to accidentally do, this is not, it's not my being clever, it's sometimes we composers accidentally stumble onto something that works, And that's exactly what happened with me. I mean, I had no idea what really would happen. I'd never written a piece that asked the orchestra to play any high note, not specific ones. So what I think I found what was really exciting was it unleashed a kind of energy that you don't get when you are actually trying to hit a certain high note. So you're free to hit any high note, and it allowed for a kind of energy that I didn't notice in some of the other pieces on the program, because anything goes. So you just go for it. And when I was conducting it, I remember the first time I asked them to do it, it was rather timid. I said, any high note. And it got more and more aggressive in a good kind of way. And there was a kind of energy that I think was infective. Everybody realized that this is the way this piece works. And it's then tempered by some chorales later on, which were within range and not so difficult to execute. So I was extremely happy and delighted at my own surprise of stumbling onto something that worked, that I really had very little idea how it would eventually turn out.
I haven't included a recording just for the sake of time today, but do go and check out Dark Sun by Stephen Montague if you haven't heard it. It's really powerful work. Now, we've got a few people in the room today that have written for Coma, which is really cool. But I just did want to mention one particular composer. Philip Venables is in the room with us today, and I know we're going to be hearing from Philip later. Philip wrote a really excellent piece, one of our most played pieces in 2004, called Dutch Courage. And I just thought I'd point it out because instead of using specified pitches, Philip's used directional pitch guidances. And this gives the players the freedom to focus all of their practice into driving the rhythmic energy and the varied dynamics, which really formulate the lifeblood of the work. And my other little favorite thing is Philip gives these really kind little mentions in the score, like great work at the end of a climatic crescendo. And I just think we all need a bit more of that in our scores. So I wanted to give that a shout out. We're just going to hear a tiny excerpt of Philip's work. This is a recording by the London Sinfonietta. So, really excited now to invite some of our Coma London players to join me on the stage. So do you want to come and get set up? So yes, please make them welcome. These are members of our local ensemble in London. So we have Matthew, Mick, Karen, and George. And I'm going to hand... and I'm going to hand it over to them.
Hi. So the first piece we're going to play is called Outside Phrases by Eloise Werner, and it was written for us for our 2022 festival. And the piece is it has this fragment of text of poetry by Arthur Rimbaud, and the players speak this text in French and then make abstract sounds in response to the text that they have spoken. And the instructions say that performers are invited to respond to specific words through abstract sounds in whichever way feels good and instinctive. There is no right or wrong, and varied is good. And in this way, sort of together, we arrive at an improvised kind of new language. And so when you're speaking the text in what to all of us is a second language, it's a situation where correct pronunciation and technical understanding kind of isn't the point. And I think if you were to go away and educate yourself about how to deliver the text correctly, then that would kind of undermine the piece, which is about misunderstanding and translation and abstraction of meaning. And I think that sort of neatly encapsulates something that is true of Coma's music, that, when it doesn't involve text as well, that in many of our most successful compositions, the aim isn't to precisely replicate what is on the page, and certainly not to do it the same way every time in a way that you might call technically correct. But what you do have to do is to respond to the music seriously, inhabit it, and play with deliberation and confidence, even where there's this kind of level of abstraction involved. And what we also do a lot of the time is that we will work directly with the composers, and they will come and workshop with us, and that's always great because they will, they'll talk us through their process. And so Eloise came and sort of explained what she was thinking about in the piece about because she's a French composer, but living and working in London, and she was thinking about this idea of like translation and kind of like working in a second language and the abstraction of meaning. And so then we as an ensemble, once we've sort of understood that, we go along for this kind of journey with them, and we feel like we have more understanding and ownership of the piece. So we're going to play a little bit of it now. So then now we're going to do a little bit of a piece called Pathways by Blasio Kavuma, who is a non-classical associate composer and wrote this for us in 2020. And what this piece has is a lot of these melodic lines that they begin on a typical stave with defined notes, and then the stave disappears, but you've still got the note heads, and so you follow the kind of what you imagine to be the melody without necessarily precision and accuracy, and that gives you as a performer a kind of like creative influence on the piece, but as well as having like a bit of a safety net in a way, in that you can keep it to your range, and again, if you don't do the same thing every single time, then that is right, basically. It gives you sort of the freedom as an amateur to be creative while without the fear of failure in quite the same way. So we'll play a little bit of this now.
Thank you. Thank you. You're good. Thanks, Coma London. Thank you so much, Matt, Mick, Karen, and George. Here comes the plug. Coma London rehearse every Tuesday night, Queen Mary University. If you know someone that wants to join, or if you want to join, there's the details. Next slide. Okie dokes. Yeah, next slide, thanks. So we've had so many unique approaches to Coma commissions and projects over our 31 years, and if you're interested to explore more, I encourage you to pop onto our website or our YouTube channel. You can see all sorts of things we've been part of. We're selling 2 of our published anthologies today, so do go and take a look. And we're actually in the middle of our big festival at the moment, and for the month of March, we have 10% off all our scores. There's a little discount code there, or if you can't see it, come and ask me later. So I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about the wacky world of Coma. It's incredibly unique and a total privilege to be part of, I gotta say. And I wanted to leave you today with a really beautiful sentiment by the wonderful Gillian Moore that I think wraps up the essence of the Coma energy. For those who don't know Gillian, she's currently the South Bank Centre's Artistic Associate, incredible human, curator, journalist, broadcaster. Can't say enough positive things about her. And I'll just add that the video you're about to see of Gillian and the ones of Stephen, they were outtakes from a documentary we made last year for our 30th birthday, which is also available on YouTube. So do go and have a look.
Something else I think is important about Coma is that if you ever were thinking that contemporary music for all or for amateurs somehow needed to be, you know, a soft option or, you know, always slow minimalist, bit of easy listening, etc. I think what often makes me smile and what I sort of really value about Coma is, yes, there is music like that, but they're quite, you know, it's quite hardcore, a lot of it. It's quite radical, it's quite non-compromising, and that's inspiring too, because it's just saying, you know, whatever your level of skill, you can get your teeth into some really serious music if you want to, and also have fun with music too.
Thanks very much.